Welcome back to the Acorn Land Lab Off-Grid Course Overview. Today we're talking about modern transportation issues. We've moved into a new chapter, we're past sanitation, and we're talking about how transportation factors into off-grid living, particularly here in America, in North America. So modern transportation is so different than it was even just 120 years ago. Back in the early 1900s, cars had not come onto the scene. The US was far more provincial, with small towns that were thriving. The 1920s are considered the peak of small town life in North America by many studies. It's when small towns were providing much of their needs directly. Farming communities were alive and well. In the 1920s, we didn't have the federal highway system. We didn't have a landscape dominated by cars and suburbia. All of that happened after World War II and leading up to. So the world we live in truly is an experiment. And frankly, the car experiment is one that is failing dramatically. Last year, over 7,600 people died being hit by cars walking, as they were just walking as a pedestrian. In 2010, that number was 4,302. That's a 77% rise. So either people are driving way more recklessly, which I'm sure is a cause and a factor. People are trying to walk more in car-centric areas. There's probably many different factors going into that 77% rise, but the number of pedestrian deaths continues to skyrocket. This is an epidemic that people don't talk about because so many people are addicted to their cars and they don't think there's any other options. There's a complete lack of creativity at a urban planning level and at a community level. So let's talk about the key issues with cars and modern transportation in America and how that factors into sustainable, decentralized, local off-grid living. All right, right off the bat, expensive ownership, car payments, fuel, insurance, maintenance, damage, repairs. The annual cost of owning a car in 2022 was $10,728 a year. That is $894 a month. So you're almost paying $1,000 a month when you factor in the fuel, the insurance, the payment, the maintenance, everything. For many people, this is 20 to 25% of their income. People are paying up to a quarter and sometimes more of their income on car-related expenses just to get to their job. Think about how perverse that is. You are paying through the nose for this device to go commute to get to your job and then go back home. If you think about all the things you pay for just to do your job, you start wondering, well, how much less could I earn if I could just work from home and not have to fool with the commute in the car? And as car ownership gets more and more expensive, more people are going to face that economic reality. Our world in America has been totally rebuilt for cars. It is not built for humans. We have zoning that mandates massive parking lots. We have all these roads that are a road and a street combined. It's a strode. It's a useless piece of road where it's got sidewalks, but no one walks on the sidewalks. And it's really just meant for fast cars to zoom. The biking lanes here in my county are a total joke. They are right beside a 4-lane highway. I mean, it's a suicide lane. They painted the bike symbol, they painted the line, but it's not a biking lane. It's an extra 3 feet if you happen to swerve in your semi or your SUV. And don't get me wrong, I've got a car, my wife has a car. There's no way of not having a car in many parts of North America, especially here in the Southeast. We don't have walkable communities hardly. We don't have public infrastructure. But before I chase those rabbits, let's talk more about the key issues with cars and modern infrastructure and transportation. Expensive ownership. We're paying almost $10,000 to $11,000 a year for these vehicles. For many people, it's up to a quarter of their income. High insurance costs. Insurance costs continue just to bump up, and they're even higher for young people, especially in densely populated areas. The actuaries, the insurance actuaries, they run all the stats. They're going to make sure the insurance companies make a profit. And the rising insurance, just because of increasing crashes, increasing chaos in our urban centers, continues to lead to higher costs of car ownership. Car accidents are a leading cause of death in the United States. Road accidents result in fatalities and injuries, impacting families and communities. I know many people who've lost a loved one to car accidents. Why aren't we all talking about how we can fix this problem? We can save a lot of money in the process as well. Environmental impact. There's of course the emissions coming from your car, But there's also, think about your tires wearing out. All those rubber particulates get washed into our streams and creeks and then go into the ocean. There are so many carcinogenic poisons coming from our cars. Cancer rates are higher for people that live near freeways, studies have shown. The municipal roadwork industry. Engineering companies thrive off all the road work that counties and cities give them. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and our roads get chewed up and worn out after just a few years. They're replacing roads in this county that were redone just a few years ago, which is awful for us taxpayers, but it's great for the engineering companies. So there's a whole industry that is being protected around rebuilding disposable roads and selling more disposable cars. Our cars are disposable, our roads are disposable. The roads that the Romans made are still functioning. They're strong in Europe because they made them rock solid, no pun intended. Here, our asphalt roads wear out in a heartbeat. Predatory car litigation industry. You see those billboards everywhere. You're injured, call 444-444, whatever the numbers are. There's so many billboards for the car litigation industry, and it is such a litigious culture. More and more wrecks are happening, so more and more people are lawyering up and suing, and that just makes insurance more expensive. Infrastructure challenges. Here in the US, our bridges, our highways, our roads, they're crumbling. They were built decades ago, and the investment has not continued to keep them up. And frankly, we shouldn't. We should be scaling these back. We should be reducing the number of roads we have and focusing on local solutions to where we don't need to travel nearly as much. Car infrastructure will bankrupt many American cities and suburbs. Strong Towns has so many good resources on this. I'm going to link to Strong Towns down below. Our county here is $1 billion behind in road work, and we're a growing county. They're still building more subdivisions and neighborhoods. If you look at the way the math works, it's like a Ponzi scheme. The county can continue to function as long as more houses are being built, more new people are moving in. But when the county plateaus, that's when urban decay begins. We've seen this in Detroit. We've seen this in Rust Belt cities. If you look up towards Atlanta, the suburban communities that used to be right around Atlanta are now decaying. They're crime-ridden. There's a total lack of investment. It's because the infrastructure is so expensive to maintain. When folks build those communities, they live in them while they're new, then they move out, and then that area falls into decay and disrepair, and crime sweeps in. And it really has a whole lot to do with urban planning, car infrastructure, and how unsustainable that model is financially. Of course, there's our dependency on fossil fuels and all the geopolitical issues and military conflicts that come with that. Traffic congestion, health impacts, sedentary lifestyles. Americans are so sick and unhealthy. Car culture has a huge hand to play in that. Urban planning challenges. Many people want to live in a walkable community, but because there are so few walkable communities, those places are so expensive to live in. Think about historic downtowns. The house my wife and I purchased is in a historic downtown, and we were blessed to be able to buy it before this place started to gentrify. But because modern zoning laws effectively make walkable areas illegal because they give preferential treatment to cars, there's such a limited number of walkable areas, it seems like those are only for the wealthy. When walkability should not be a gift only for the rich, it should be for everybody. We want more walkable towns. Many people don't want to fool with having a car. And it doesn't mean you won't use one. You can always rent one. There's many services. I used to rent cars when I was in college and didn't own one. But those are the key issues with infrastructure here in our North American environment. And the same issues apply to other parts of the world as well. The car industry is all about churning through resources, the cars, the fuel, the roads. If we redesign communities to where we're getting our water locally, we're growing way more of our food locally, we have more entertainment locally. If we go local, the need for cars plummets. You might have heard of the Michelin stars with fine dining. The Michelin concept was created by the Michelin tire company as a way of getting people to drive more to restaurants to use up their tires, which I think is hilarious. We equate Michelin with fine dining, but it was a gimmick to begin to get people out and about to put more wear and tear on their tires visiting restaurants. We're likely going to see less roads overall in the US as we can't afford to continue this pace of infrastructure. It is not a bad thing, actually, at all. We need to be reducing lanes and increasing all types of other greenways and green spaces. Now, as much as I want to dive into all the engaging and interesting solutions to these issues, we're going to save the solutions for the videos coming up. So we need a whole culture shift around cars. We need to move away from having 2 cars per family because it's such a financial drain. And if we do need to continue having 2 cars per family, we need to change the culture so that people can write off their cars as a business expense. Your car is critical to get to your job for many of us. If CEOs can write off their jets and their yachts that are not needed for their work, then why can the common person not write off their car to get to their job? That's an interesting question. That's one I think we should all ponder and perhaps act upon more and more. So we've covered the issues. Modern car culture is terrible for our health. It's massively polluting. It's very expensive. It's going to continue to just increase the tax burden on all of us. And for many of us, we only need the car to commute to a job we don't even want to commute to in the first place on freeways. I was so thankful when I could start working in my small town and I didn't have to drive an hour and a half away to Atlanta. That commute was putting my life on the line every single day. I love the push for remote work that happened during COVID. Everyone involved in that should hang on to that as tight as possible and not get drugged back into the cities to be able to have to commute every single day. And at a minimum, try to keep a hybrid schedule going. All right, we've talked a lot about the modern transportation issues. I'll have statistics on pedestrian deaths, on car expenses, on the municipal bankruptcies that'll continue to just loom. That's gloomy stuff. It's all real though. We've got to move away from car culture. We've got to engage with some new, fresh, creative ideas. And the next few videos will be all about that. Your next steps. Dig into the work of strong towns. I've got links below. Look up these 2 innovative new micro EVs, the Aptera and the Squad Car. We'll talk more about those in coming videos. Have you ever visited a walkable beltline like the Atlanta Beltline? I'll have links below there as well. Check out a beltline path and see what it looks like to move around in a car-free environment on e-bikes, scooters, feet, pedal power. It really is so refreshing. It's a vision for what the future could and should be like. We're going to talk about innovative new transportation systems today and a vision for where transportation could go. If you think about transportation on a spectrum, you've got public transportation over here, like large-scale public transportation like trains, the train systems they have in Europe, Japan, England, where it takes a massive amount of public cooperation to build these projects, but they work very, very well. And then on the far end, you've got super lightweight individual transportation systems like a bicycle. Very small, compact, affordable, but built for one person and one person alone. In the middle, we have cars. Cars are the predominant way all of us Americans get around. They really are kind of like the worst of both worlds at this point for many of us, cost-wise, traffic-wise. We talked about all that in the last video. We're not going to dive into that. Today, we're going to focus on innovative systems to move away from that middle of cars, but to move to the left and the right with bigger public transportation systems and smaller, individual, more inexpensive transportation systems. Because we're paying a fortune for our cars in the middle of that spectrum where we should be working collaboratively for public systems. And then for the individual needs, we use much more affordable micro EVs and other lightweight transportation systems. Here's what we're not going to talk about really today. I'll hit on it here at the beginning. Mainstream EVs. Mainstream EVs they're interesting and they get a lot of attention. Tesla, Rivian, Lightyear. But if you really boil them down, at the beginning of their lifespan, they're far more ecologically damaging than a gas-powered vehicle with all the resources that have gone into building it. So they're already more polluting from the moment they're created. If you power them on renewable energy over their lifespan, they can become a little bit more sustainable. But who's to say people are going to actually do that? Many EVs are being powered by electricity from the grid coming from coal plants. So there's a bit of a bait and switch with mainstream EVs right now. The technology is not bad, but all we're doing is replacing massive cars with massive cars. The electric Hummer is truly a joke. It's ridiculous that even exists. With the limited resources for lithium-ion batteries, electrifying a Hummer seems insane. While there's nothing bad with the status quo of EVs per se, it's not improving much. It doesn't improve car culture. They're more expensive for all of us to purchase. they're not less environmentally damaging, and it's still just riding in a big car. Fundamentally, nothing is really changing. So we're talking about truly innovative materials today, not just electrifying the average vehicle like we are seeing with many companies. Mark Mills has some great information on this. He has really broken down the mineral availability, the costs of lithium batteries, the difference that EVs today are or are not making. I'll link to Mark Mills' work down below. He's just a pragmatist, and I appreciate that. There's another video, a TED Talk I'm going to link to, talking about how if you really want to make a difference financially for yourself and environmentally, hybrid cars truly make more of a difference than gas-powered or a large-scale EV. But without further ado, let's dive into the innovative concepts that are coming and that are on the horizon. And I'll give you a hint, they're all small. They're small micro vehicles that could lead to a whole new way of getting around if we can just divorce ourselves from the modern car infrastructure. One of my favorites is the Aptera solar car. This little company's been struggling to get off the ground and have liftoff. I've pre-ordered one because I'm really rooting for them. I know other folks like Ben who's pre-ordered one. We want this company to work. This is a hyper aerodynamic vehicle, and we'll throw some footage of this up on the screen. This car seats 2 people. It is designed, it looks like a fish or a dolphin. Super aerodynamic. It's got solar panels baked into the body, and it can actually get a range of 40 miles a day just off the solar charging on the body alone. If you give it a full charge from your solar panels or the grid, you can have a range of up to 1,000 miles with the Aptera. I would never need to charge if I owned an Aptera. My daily commute is way less than 40 miles, so I would simply drive this Aptera around and let it charge in parking lots. And that's how I would get around, a totally solar-powered vehicle. They're saying the price range will begin around $25,000, $26,000, which blew my mind. I was expecting something far higher. But this vehicle is super innovative. They're focused on efficiency, which most car makers truly are not focused on efficiency in body design or aerodynamics. The Aptera solar car looks like a little spaceship, and I'm really hoping they get off the ground. In the hope that they do, we're including the Aptera in our Land Lab simulator, just to show people what the specs are. So beyond the Aptera, there are other solar-powered vehicles coming online. The Squad solar car is a very small 4-wheeled vehicle because the Aptera is actually a 3-wheeler. The Squad solar car seats 2 to 4 people. I believe it's up to 4. Let me double check that, but at least 2 people. And it is meant for getting around in cities. You can park up to 3 Squad solar cars in a traditional parking spot. They really make so much sense. It's basically an enclosed golf cart with solar panels on top, but they're meant for short commutes to reduce traffic congestion in big cities. And that's a pattern we'll talk about. Pushing big cars out of cities and leaving cities free to simply have very, very small EVs, e-bikes, pedal power, feet power, everything but the massive vehicles that we're all too used to here in the US. Other items that are a little bit less flashy but still make a huge difference, especially in countries like the Netherlands, cargo bikes. I've seen more and more amazing cargo bike designs. It's a death wish to ride a bike or a cargo bike here in the US because we don't have bike-specific pathways. We need to stop building as many roads, cut our current roads in half, build more car-free pathways, and transition from big vehicles to more of these cargo bikes, Apteras for the road system, Squad solar cars. It's a revolution in smaller vehicle design. We'd all get a lot more exercise, and many Americans need exactly that, more exercise. So we've got the solar vehicles that are being developed, cargo bikes, e-bikes, reviving rail in America. I could drive up to Atlanta to get on Amtrak, but it would cost me a fortune to ride on the train, and I can't go anywhere I really want to go. Amtrak will take me up towards DC or down towards Louisiana, which would be nice if I wanted to go to DC or Louisiana. Where I actually want to go from Atlanta is Chattanooga or Savannah. Amtrak doesn't go to either place. Our national rail system is underwhelming, and I would love to see a renaissance and a revival in rail travel. Here in our small towns in the South, we've got the old brick train depots in many towns, but there's no longer passenger rail. We used to have it, but it's gone now. It would be amazing to be able to rely on a small solar vehicle, an e-bike, some type of ride share even, to be able to bike, walk, or cruise the 1 mile, 2 miles to the train depot, then hop on a train to where I want to truly go. City trolley cars, There's more towns that are making experiments with city trolley cars. Many of those were ripped out in various towns and cities as the car industry really got going. And the car industry actually lobbied to have many of these trolley cars removed in favor of buses. The biggest thing that would make a huge difference for so many of us is building beltline pathways like the Atlanta Beltline to connect small towns, to be an artery going through a county from a small town to another destination. Having footpaths and car-free pathways brings so much economic activity. Up in the Atlanta Beltline, there are so many restaurants and apartments and venues and parks built along that footpath because people want that environment. It's quiet, it's car-free, you can hear people talking, there's cafes with tables. It is the only feature like that in a major city in the state of Georgia. There really is so little walkable infrastructure in the Southeast, but the Beltline gives me hope because it shows what we could do if the desire was there for us to move away from car infrastructure. Footpaths and beltlines around small town centers encourage walking, reduces traffic. It actually boosts business for small businesses. Micro-mobility really is going to be the wave of the future, I believe, between these small EVs, electric scooters, electric bikes. And I hear some of y'all right now, yes, sometimes there's bad weather, sometimes it rains. A little bad weather won't melt all of us, and we don't have to exclusively use bikes and e-bikes and scooters. We just need the options. The Squad Solar Car being totally enclosed, the Aptera, those are options that are great for inclement weather. Having more car-free zones in downtowns has proven itself to work well in stimulating business and walkability. In Europe, they're pushing cars out of cities more and more and more. I think of this as the bubble effect. You had a city where cars and roads were just all through it, chopping them up. And now people realize we need the cars out of the cities. So they're building a bubble to push the cars further out, further out, further out. And I hear a lot of conspiracy theories around the 15-minute city concept, which I do think are truly silly. The 15-minute city is all about walkability and quality of life. Being able to get cars out of that is not about locking people into their cities. It's about building cities that are far more enjoyable, healthy, and affordable. It really is not a good argument to say that you have to protect your freedom to drive your car wherever you want it to go. 100 years ago, 120 years ago, no one had a car to drive everywhere they want to go on asphalt. I love that song, They Paved Paradise and Put it in a Parking Lot. It's so true. And if you're fighting to have your ability to drive your car anywhere you want, you're really working against affordability, human health, the ability to be able to have enjoyable downtown areas. And I'm not saying cars don't have their place. They're great for going from a city to another city on the edge of the city. But cars should go to cities, not through cities. So we've covered most of the innovative concepts here. Check out the Aptera and the Squad Solar Car. Research the Eli car. There are more small EVs being designed in other parts of the world that have great promise. And I'm not just sold on the small EVs. If there were small gas-powered vehicles that could operate not with the large cars and the SUVs, the point is going smaller. EVs are obviously preferable since they're going to be quieter and have no emissions where they're operating. But let's review next steps, and then we'll continue moving through the video series. Research the Aptera, research the Squad Solar Car. Do some research on Mark Mill's work. Take a look at how EVs, the same size as our regular gas cars, really aren't making too much of a difference. Environmentally, they're more expensive, they're not changing car infrastructure. Think about it. Would you commute on an e-bike, a scooter, or a solar golf cart if you had a shaded, car-free path to drive on? And it cuts your car transportation bill, by 80%. Visit a car-free path near you. The Atlanta Beltline is a great example of orienting around car-free community. Car-free is the way to go. Think about this as well. The Beltline is such an interesting place. There's shops to visit, there's restaurants, there are sculptures and parks. If your backyard, if your hometown is more interesting, would you feel the need to travel as much? Probably not. The more we built in our own personal homestead, the less need we have to travel because we've got so many cool projects to do where we are. If people invested more in their small towns, they would be more proud of where they lived, and they wouldn't feel the need to hop in a giant car and drive 2 hours to find something of interest. Our backyard has chickens, rabbits, methane digesters, gardens, all types of projects for us to engage in. And our downtown gets more and more investment. We've got the coffee shop, we've got an axe throwing place, we've got restaurants. Sometimes there's different events and music venues. There is a resurgence happening in downtowns and local interest. So be part of that movement. The more we can cut down on car infrastructure, the more money we're going to save, the longer we'll live, the healthier we'll be, and the quieter and more peaceful our neighborhoods and subdivisions can be. We're going to dive into car-free pathways for microtransit a bit more. We covered a lot of that material in the last video, but we're going to have a few more videos and just references below for what car-free transit can look like at a local level. So let's start off with talking about the benefits of a beltline or a rails to trails project like the Silver Comet in Smyrna, Georgia. There's another rails to trails project called the Cricket Frog Trail in Covington, Georgia. Both of them are connecting little towns together, connecting neighborhoods together, and they're just a wonderful addition for communities. So benefits of car-free pathways and beltlines. Small business boost. It's a great location to put small restaurants and businesses with the foot traffic, especially on bigger ones like the beltline. Tranquil environment. The Japanese have that term, I believe it's shirin-yoko. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but forest bathing. Tranquil environment. Car-free streets, car-free pathways create such a peaceful place where folks can reconnect with nature. And it allows people more time to relax, to talk, to walk. I envision a world where we've got these pathways and there are tiny homes, there are yurts, there are small, affordable dwellings built off of these connective pathways where eventually we wean ourselves off of needing cars for every household to where you can bike, you can walk, you can take a small EV to the local grocery store, farmers market, cafes. Basically a renaissance of small town living. Community gathering spaces. Car-free areas become gathering points for community events. Parks and amenities. The Silver Comet pathway up in Smyrna, Georgia had a number of parks along it. I'd take a bike ride for miles and you could swing off into a park and enjoy that zone. Same with the Atlanta Beltline and the Cricket Frog path in Covington, Georgia. Restaurants and cafes are a natural fit to be just scattered along one of these pathways. It promotes an active lifestyle. One of the reasons healthcare costs are so high in the US is it's a sick nation. Obesity is higher than it's ever been. People have more episodes of heart disease, depression, anxiety. Our health issues are booming, unfortunately, and a lack of activity is part of that. Attractive real estate. So up on the Atlanta Beltline, that was a catalyst for gentrification, and that has its own set of challenges, but it is better to gentrify than to not to. So if we have pathways going up all over the place, we'll see less gentrification because it won't be as unique. We'll simply have affordable, livable environments that are walkable for more people. Gentrification happens when it's a scarce commodity. Mixed use development. This is a key aspect we need to push for in zoning. Our current zoning prevents us from having a little corner shop cafe in the suburbs. We need to be able to have mixed use zoning to where I could have a tea shop in my front yard just a few feet away from this long pathway where people are biking and walking. That is real freedom. That is the ability to use your business skills, to use your property in a way that's beneficial for the broader community. Massive reduction in pollution and noise. Car-free areas and pathways reduce emissions, noise, air pollution. Having these car-free zones, these walkable, bikeable pathways for small EVs as well, it's a catalyst for urban renewal. There are some towns that have car-free pathways that are pretty engaging. Peachtree City, Georgia is worth looking up. I'll put a link down below. Peachtree City, Georgia has golf cart paths all over the place. Many people have golf carts just to get to the store, and that's something we should replicate in more zones. Enhanced safety. It is a lot more difficult to be injured when you are walking, scootering, or biking rather than flying on 2,000 pounds of metal on a freeway. Tourist attraction and community identity. Having people invest in unique spaces will bring more people from other towns to visit. And your community will become proud of that focal point, that feature. Environmental conservation. Green corridors along car-free paths support biodiversity and urban ecosystems. Reduce traffic congestion. The more people that are using the car-free infrastructure means the less people are competing in traffic on the car-focused roads. Inclusivity and accessibility. Car-free pathways are accessible to all types of people. There's many folks that can't drive cars. A car-free pathway is good for children, it's good for the elderly, and everyone in between. All right, your next steps. Visit a beltline like the Atlanta Beltline. Write to your city or county leaders petitioning for a walking path feature and more car-free infrastructure. Show friends and family cargo bikes, e-bikes, Aptera, Squad Solar. People don't know about these things here in the States. They need to. If you show other people these innovative methods, if you get with your local leaders, there is a solid chance you could be the catalyst for kicking off a green space trail that revitalizes your small town or urban district. Today we're talking about pushing cars out of the downtown bubble. I live in a small town in the metro Atlanta area, and our downtown area is beautiful. The only thing that is a bummer about our downtown is 3 state highways intersect through that downtown area. So we're getting semis, we're getting massive amounts of traffic. It's never quiet or peaceful on that downtown area because of the sheer volume of traffic. Traffic has only been booming in the metro Atlanta area for the last 30 years plus, and will continue to do so as the Sunbelt area grows more. Our downtown areas have definitely suffered because of the increased wear and tear and noise and pollution from cars. The idea of pushing cars out of downtowns, of having a bubble of protection around downtowns, really is so appealing and beneficial for so many reasons. America is such a massive country. We do need cars. Cars are not a bad thing. We should have more rail. We should have more micro-mobility solutions. I'm not advocating we get rid of all cars. That would be impractical. But we do need more options. Right now, cars dominate the landscape. It's almost all we use. Pushing cars out of downtowns can show people how wonderful a walkable downtown can be once again. Having cars flying down the roads is almost like having an endless abyss when you're walking through your downtown. You and your children could be a few feet away from a fatal accident if you misstep. And that's no way for our communities to operate. The vision that I've read more about, the vision that makes sense to me for off-grid communities, for rebuilding local communities, for sustainable communities, is pushing vehicles out of the downtown area, small towns, big cities, having cars come up to the edge, the perimeter. That's where you can park them, that's where you can leave them. Then having bikes, e-scooters, e-bikes, golf cart style vehicles that are quiet, that are slow, for navigating the interior of the city. Cars should go to a city, not through a city. The freeway system, the interstate system, has cut through so many beautiful cities and caused so much damage to historical cities and areas. And it's such a shame because we're so focused on having the roads go everywhere. It's almost like there's no destination. The roads just continue on, squashing communities and cities. We're not asking ourselves, why are we building all these roads? Why not rebuild a local environment where we don't need to be punching freeways through cities and highways through small towns? So, benefits of car-free downtown areas and urban bubbles. Small business boost. Car-free downtowns attract way more foot traffic for local businesses. Pedestrian-friendly environment. We shouldn't call them pedestrian deaths. Pedestrians don't cause the deaths. It's cars. They're car-related deaths. Cars that are killing pedestrians. Cleaner air and reduced pollution, noise reduction, promoting active transportation for a healthier society, cultural and social engagement. There's a reason Americans like to travel to Europe. There are more car-free zones because it was built in a car-free epoch. The US was so new, it was readapted for cars fairly quickly in the early 1900s. We had walkable infrastructure, but we destroyed it with the advent of the car. Accessible urban design, public space enhancement, boosting real estate values, reducing congestion, tourist appeal, environmental conservation, safer streets. All those are benefits of having that bubble. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's a big societal shift. I've been talking a lot about downtowns. Even living off grid, I want to be near a downtown that's vibrant, with a vibrant community. And the reality is most of us will always have cars, but what a difference we could make if we all just needed one car per family and a few micro EVs or more bikes. everything I've been communicating about transportation and the current failings in the system is not an attempt to eliminate car culture. Right now, this is our transportational environment. It's all car culture virtually. If we could half that and then build in the other half, diverse options for biking, cargo bikes, e-scooters, e-bikes, Apteras, Squad Solar, the car-free options. Because right now we don't have car-free options. You have to have a car to function in most of the US. We need car-free options, and that's what this is all about. Your next steps: visit a car-free community. I'll have a link to some communities below. How much do you spend on your car yearly? Is it really how you'd like to spend that money, whether it's $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000? Would you prefer to travel on an e-bike, scooter, bike, squad car? Find a local Beltline. On the Atlanta Beltline, we're able to go up there and rent scooters, rent e-bikes to see what it's like to cruise quietly down a shaded path and be in a car-free environment, which is pretty amazing. All right, that's it for now. I'll see you in the next video.